Hello and welcome to the Eskrima podcast. My name is Jason Inay and I'm an Inayan Eskrimador. So we've been going over the elements of reaction time for this last series bit here and comparing it to the OODA loop and the tote model. We're going to talk about strategy. So for strategy, to the OODA loop, it's the orient, decide phase, decide really, right? And for the tote model, it's the operate, test, right, phase, really the operate phase, right? And, we've gone through the stages of being aware, being able to perceive things, making an analysis of what it is and what we're going to do about it. And then now we're to what are we going to do about it? Strategy is the plan of action that we're going to take in a given situation. Every technique that you have is a tactic, and a series of techniques meant to meet an overall objective is a strategy. However, it's good enough to just have a simple tactic. If your opponent doesn't have a lot of fight in them, it's not going to take a lot to defeat them, right? It really just depends on how much fight your opponent has and how far you're willing to go. That will be a large part of what shapes your strategy. Last night I taught Doc, and we were going over a little bit of Sinawali as he's getting better with that, and then we went over Serrata counters. And as we're practicing through all of those things, we discussed how Largamano and Sinawali and Serrata differ in their overall strategy, how they each address the same problem in a different way. And I went so far as to say that the Inayan System of Eskrima, Inayan Training Organization, the system and organization that my father created and that I now am in charge of, really isn't a fighting method, right? So the Inayan System of Eskrima is a body of knowledge. It should be imparted to you by a qualified guru that ideally really fully understands the system, right? The Inayan Training Organization is the organization that helps administer all that stuff. But it's not a fighting art, a fighting style, because it isn't. It's a system, right? The Inayan System of Eskrima is a set of styles that complement each other in different ways from a tactical level, right? Or strategic level, if you prefer. And each of those styles are fighting styles. Serrata is a fighting style, fighting method. Largamano, who's was taught to my father by Grandmaster or Great Grandmaster Leo Huron, is a fighting style used in World War II. Each of these styles have their own way of dealing with a fight. The Inayan Training Organization in and of itself is a strategy to deal with a different kind of problem. How do we communicate and impart the right behaviors that are effective and a decision-making process that is effective to accommodate different kinds of attacks, different kinds of opponents, different kinds of scenarios, right? The individual styles that we see in the system, and then individual styles in most other art. So Balintawak as an example. Doce Pares is a multi-style system, but its approach is different than Inayan insofar as the difference between weapon categories versus methods. But each of them represent a different strategy, a different way of dealing with an opponent and the problems that they might bring forth, and how we might solve those problems. So when we look at the elements of reaction time, what we have, having learned any one of those systems or styles as mentioned, but preferably Inayan, right? We have some canned responses, if you will. Standard ideas that allow us to approach a fight with some preloaded answers, preloaded strategies. There was I think he's an Austrian general, said, no strategy survives contact with the enemy, which is a very, very good way of saying and expressing what Tyson said, that everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And what Hickson Gracie tries to rebrand with, you hit a black belt in the face and he's a brown belt, hit him once more in the face, he's a blue belt, hit him once more in the face, he's a white belt. Right? It's this whole idea that your regular strategy may not work once you make contact with the enemy. So it's good to have many answers to that, right? And when we look at the TOTE model, which is important because it gives us a little bit richer idea of how to go from awareness, perception, analysis to strategy, what we would do in the event that we need to adjust, right? So test, operate, test, exit means test. What am I getting? What do I want? Conduct operation, right? Which is the act and execute part of the OODA loop and the elements of reaction time. Test again. Did I get what I want? What am I getting? If I don't, I go back to operating again. So tote, and then exit is I'm done, which is a different parsing or timing, right? So the TOTE model is very useful for giving us a richer idea of what we would do with our elements of reaction time. Because as we come up with a strategy, we may discover that our opponent's prepared for it, or that a slight tweak may increase our yield, right? And always remember, as we go through these elements of reaction time, and I use it to teach and how we might attack it, each of those stages, that when we're using these ideas, it's just a way for us to understand what we're doing. Here comes a high forehand strike from the right hand that will arrive at my left shoulder, or from the right side of my opponent's body that will arrive on the left side of my body, left shoulder of my body. This is typically called an angle 1. Here's the problem. What's the strategy? I don't know. What kind of room do you have? You have enough room to dodge? Maybe defang the snake? Use Largamona. Or if you're too far away to bridge the gap and move into medium or close range, probably use Largamona. Do you have room to circle? Right? Do you have the need to zone away from another tool or another opponent? You might want to use Nawali. Can you flank? Is there enough room beside and behind your opponent to move by, to strafe? Maybe Dequartis is your answer. Do you want to confront? Maybe stand your ground, get closer. Do you want to entangle? Maybe use Kadena Damano. Each of the styles provide a strategy of how I might deal with an opponent. Sarada, as an example, though capable of dealing with multiple opponents, is less suited in comparison to Dequartis and Largamano, simply because I get tied up with one opponent as I get into close quarters. It's easier to be flanked, etc. It's not that you can't use Sarada against multiple opponents. You definitely can, right? But I can use a flathead screwdriver as long as it's not too big to open just about any, to turn just about any screw. But if that screw has a Phillips head on it, a Phillips screwdriver is going to do a lot better, right? It's not that I can't do it, it's just that there's something that's probably better, right? And this is also part of like the process that my father was going through in 2000, as he, it was really 99, 2000, as he passed, which we're coming up on the anniversary of his passing real soon, next month, which we'll have the memorial workout for, 2023. It's going to be awesome. But showing how each of the strategies could counter strategy, if you will, the other methods, right? But in any event, so, you know, the problem of the angle one and what we would do with it, the strategy that we need to employ, it really depends. What's our objectives, right? How many opponents do we have? Where's the light? What's the flooring like? The footing like? You don't really want to use a highly mobile style like Largamano needs to be, or Sinawali needs to be, if you have a lot of loose footing, or you have, how do you say it, encumbered footing. I remember when I was a kid, now Masrib Suro Defanti, at the time Masrib Guru Defanti, this is like 80s, right? We would train in a plowed field, and you know, if it was freshly plowed, the orchard, your foot would sink into the soil 6 to 10, maybe 11, 12 inches. I'm not sure. I was a little kid at the time, of course, right? But I remember going up past my ankles very easily as a little kid, and sometimes deeper. Replacing your feet in that material, moving forward, moving backward, moving sideways, is a little bit of a challenge, right? Doing it in sand is challenging. And so we could develop our footwork better so that we lift our feet up higher, things like that. We could be more selective of how we move our feet to adapt to the terrain, which we did. Or equally so, figure out the techniques that are best suited for having one side or another forward as you don't move as much, right? Your strategy changes, your tactics change because the terrain changed, or the terrain is different. You know, most of the people that I know that train in martial arts, they train on a flat piece of ground, usually carpeted. More often it's matted, the lighting's perfect, training's on schedule, right? And it's not at all how fights happen. Fights are in the grass, on a hillside, on a stairwell, on a ledge, in a hallway, on a bed, between cars, over an oil spot, etc. Right? All these different things. And so your strategies have to change. Now, that being said, how do we attack that strategy? If we have an opponent that likes to kick, right? Obstructions at the footing are very useful, right? You can attack someone's strategy by making the environment with which they're trying to employ their strategy problematic, right? Remember working in the bars and learning that you really couldn't punch the way you think that you could in a crowded bar. There's too much crowding around. And then if you're in the middle of a brawl, right, where there's more than 5 people fighting in the same space in different directions, especially, you're getting jostled. So your footing is messed up. You may not even actually be touching the ground for brief periods of the time if there's all press, right? Learned that also in mosh pits when I used to go to heavy metal concerts and stuff like that. You don't have the same kind of terrain, and the context is in a certain way that striking in certain ways don't work so well, or you're going to have to adapt it. So your strategy has to change. Now, when we look at those experiences and the experiences that you may have had that are equally as applicable, we can look at different ways of fighting and go, oh, that fighting's not going to work here, right? If you're in a mosh pit and it's a pretty tight one, meaning there's a lot of people there, high kicking is not going to work. Not even leg kicking is going to really work well. You just can't. right? On the other hand, punching works just fine in most cases, right? If you're on a hillside, if you're in the snow, right? Some of your footwork is going to work really well going downhill or maybe sideways. Uphill ain't going to work so well. And it's snowy, so that could be sticky. It could be deep and encumbered, or it could be slippery and icy. We don't know. So your footing changes, right? How we engage our opponent is going to change the way that they can fight when we consider where. There was that movie with Jason Statham, Transporter, and they're going to fight in the auto shop garage, and he uses bicycle pedals, right? The ones with the clips or the toe holds or whatever, and he pours a bunch of dirty oil on the concrete floor, right? So in most shops that's a polished concrete, right? So it doesn't absorb the oil so much, right? And so it's very slick to begin with. If it's wet, you put oil on that. Then he begins to fight all these guys who are slipping around and falling, right? While he's got this advantage where his toe clips or whatever provide him traction. So in theory, he can kick and do the things. It doesn't really, beautifully choreographed. Don't know if that's really all that real, but the strategy of it is really nice, right? Because if your footing is terrible and slippery, you can't punch. You can't rotate correctly. You can't base your feet down so that you can push off the ground to create power. You're just falling all over the place. Honestly, if you're in a slippery situation like that, grappling is your choice. Get close enough to grapple, get a hold of the person, drag them down, right? Because you don't have anything else other than that in terms of stable footing, or change the terrain somehow. I don't know, carry around a bag of cat litter. I have no idea, but you'd have to change in some way. That's what your strategy is. That's what you have to deal with under those circumstances. So awareness, catch them by surprise, analysis, right, or perception, attack in a way that they can't even perceive it as an attack. Analysis, attack in such a way as their analysis is false or incorrect. Strategy, you attack the way that they would want to execute, right? Likewise for yourself, you want to use the appropriate strategy for the given context, right? I arrested this guy once, and his mom and his dad they wanted him taken in because he was a problem, right? And at the same time, they were going to video us while we were arresting him. That changes just about everything in terms of how we're going to arrest this person. It's not that we were going to brutalize the person, but certain arresting tactics and certain things that we would need to do to arrest don't look that great on camera. It's not that we're going to choke him or anything like that, but if he's fighting, which he was fighting, right? And how we deal with that, in a way, being conscientious of the fact that we're being videotaped or recorded, is important for us to understand, because anybody can, in that situation, while we were within the color of the law to arrest this person because he had active warrants, we still have to pay attention to what the optics are, because we're still civilly liable, right, for anything that we do. So, and the perception of a violation isn't often as bad as an actual violation when it comes to civil law, right? And just rather not deal with that, right? So here's your context, here's your scenario. Your strategies and your tactics of how you might take care of someone, how you might arrest them, are going to be different, right? Now, most of you will never have that consideration, but you will have to have consideration in the way that you might use your conflict resolution strategies. Whether that is a conflict resolution between you and a partner, you and a friend, you in a professional situation, or an actual physical fight, there's still this stage of being aware of the possibility of anything happening, making a perception of, think there's a problem, analysis, is this going to really affect me? Do I really need to do something about it? Strategy, which is what we're talking about today. I need to do X, because if X works, then I will get result Y, which is what I'm looking for, right? So I try to execute a strategy. I noticed that X isn't working so well to get Y. Maybe I need to use W. Maybe I use a little bit of X and W so that I get result Y. Maybe result Y is not really what I want now that I realize things. Maybe I want result Z. So I'm going to try to do, strategy AXV. I don't know, right? You're just using different variables to kind of understand and toggle how we might approach something, right? Thank you, Thomas Bull, right? So anyways, strategy and how we deal with that, how we work with that, right? Tomorrow it's going to be Friday, and it's, as I've said before in previous podcasts, it's been a hell of an August, right? So I'm looking forward to Friday, looking forward to getting past some of the challenges I've been dealing with this month that have thrown me off, which has caused my newsletter to be a month late, and I've had some lost podcasts and things like that. But we're gonna do execution tomorrow. I didn't do it at the beginning because I was in a different pattern today, but if you've made it this far, awesome. Remember to comment, like, and share. I look forward to seeing you guys. I'll be in Milwaukee in a couple weeks teaching the lovely people of Milwaukee at Source Martial Arts. Hopefully I'll see all those people from Green Bay, maybe a few people from Baraboo, Madison area, etc. So really looking forward to that. And then after that, shoot, man, I'm going to teach in Barbados. So that's pretty exciting. If you want to find out more about that, all that stuff, you got to go to the Inayan-Eskrima.com page. That one's going to have an opportunity for you to sign up for the newsletter. If you want to do in-person training, I had one of my distant students, if you will, contacts, who's coming from Singapore, asking to train in October as well. So you can find the in-person training at Inayan-Eskrima.biz. Either way, I hope to see you on the training floor.